Hey everybody, welcome to your next lesson. This lesson is going to cover multiplying mixed numbers. Now I have a number of steps here that you're going to need to follow. So you're going to want to write these down or have these handy somewhere. But the first step that when you're dealing with mixed numbers is that you've got to change them out of mixed number form. You have to change them into improper fractions. So that's huge. So the first thing when you're dealing with mixed numbers is to make them so that they're not mixed numbers. That's a huge, huge deal. So make sure you do that. Step 2 is if there is a whole number, change it to a fraction. And what that means is like if you have just like a lone 5, if we have the number 5, well, 5 can be written as 5 over 1, If we have a number like 8, well, we can write that as 8 over 1. Not over 8, but 8 over 1. Even if it's like a 1 itself, you can just write 1 over 1. Sometimes it's good to see everything as a fraction so that it doesn't confuse anybody. The third step is kind of a optional step here because as I was talking about in a previous lesson, it's okay if you don't cross-cancel, but cross-canceling is effective and it definitely helps you, especially when you get into algebra. Step 4 is just multiply from left to right. Multiply the numerators times each other and multiply the denominators. There's no LCD needed when you are multiplying mixed numbers. And the last step, which is kind of, this is assumed as well, but simplify the fraction, simplify your solution into lowest terms whenever possible. Always assume that your answer isn't in simplest form yet. Okay, so let's look at our first example here, which involves multiplying 3 2/3 and multiplying that by 3 1/2. Okay, so the first step is to change those mixed numbers to improper. So to kind of recap, if you forgot how to change mixed to improper, start at the bottom and then multiply the denominator times the whole number, which is 9, and then add the numerator. So 9 plus 2, right? 9 plus 2 is 11. So you get 11 over 3. Same thing applies to this one. We're going to start with a 2, multiply by the 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. And then 6 plus 1 is 7. So you end up getting 7 over 2. Or like some of my students call it, 7/2. I know it's 7 halves though. So you got 11/3 and we got 7 halves. So those are the fractions that we're going to want to use when we multiply this all out. It is not going to work. I'll tell you right now, it's not going to work if you multiply 3 times 3 and then 2/3 times 1/2. I know a lot of people think, I know better than you, teacher. I could do this without doing all that fancy work. No, that's not going to work. That's a bad way of doing it. You must absolutely 100% of the time change them to improper. Okay, it's got to be done that way. There's no other way to do this. I mean, I shouldn't say there's no other way. There are other ways, but the way I just talked about is not the way to do it. Okay, so now we have our problem. We have 11/3 times 7 halves. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for any cross-canceling that we can possibly do. That's not a bad habit to get into. Looking at 7 and 3 right there, are there any common factors between those two? No, not at all. Same thing for 11 and 2. There's no common factors there at all. So it's okay if we just multiply from left to right. So we got 11 times 7, which is 77. And then we have 3 times 2, which is 6. 77/6 is what we got. So we got 77/6 right there, but that's a big time improper fraction. That's a huge improper fraction. So if we want to change it to a mixed number, again, we're going to do top divided by the bottom. 77 divided by 6. Very important that you do it that way. Top divided by the bottom. Numerator divided by the denominator. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the math here. So when you do this, I'm going to use the basic, dad, mom, sister, brother, Rover algorithm, which is basically just an acronym for the algorithm for division, which stands for divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, and repeat. And that could also stand for remainder if there are no other numbers to bring down. So we're going to go ahead and follow that algorithm. That's exactly the algorithm you need to follow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so how many times does 6 divide into 7? Well, it goes into it once. So I'm going to put a 1 above the 7 that I just divided into. And then we did that step. Now we're going to multiply. 1 times 6 is 6. I'm going to put that there. Now we're going to subtract. So 7 minus 6 is going to be 1. All right, so we did that. Then we're going to bring down, I didn't write down here, but we're going to bring down the 7. And then we're going to repeat the whole process over again. So this time we're going to divide 6, this time, into 17. How many 6s divide into 17? Well, almost 3, but 3 almost doesn't count. It's got to be exactly, or it has to be underneath it. So we're going to put 2 there. So 2 times 6, we're going to multiply. 2 times 6 is 12. And then subtract 17 minus 12, and you get 5. Okay, now there's no more numbers to bring down, so this 5 is a remainder, but we're not going to put 12 remainder 5. We're going to put 12 and we're going to put a fraction. Now remember, when we put a mixed number as our answer, our remainder becomes our numerator, and the denominator is the old number that we used before, 5, 6. So you got 12 and 5, 6 right there. Okay, in the next example here, I want to show you how to multiply a mixed number times a whole number and just kind of show you how to handle that. And in this case right here, we're going to go ahead and change what we have to improper fractions. So 1 2/5 is going to be 7 over 5. And then 5, we're going to write that as a fraction over the number 1. 5 over 1, not 5 over 5, because that's different. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do 7/5 times 5 over 1. And then we're going to look for any cross-canceling. Now, the only cross-canceling I see on this one is with the 5s. Now, when you have the same number that are diagonal from each other, you can divide by themselves. So most students kind of get the hang of this, but we're going to divide by 5. But most people understand that when you have numbers that are the same, they turn into 1. So 5 divided by itself is 1. So those turn into 1 right there. So now you're left with some really simple multiplication here. 7 times 1 is 7. 1 times 1 is 1. And then we don't want to leave our answer like that. We're going to simplify this as much as possible, and we're just going to write 7. So the answer to that problem is 7. Okay, so that does it for this lesson on multiplying mixed numbers. Hopefully you guys understood it okay, and make sure you go through the practice problems that accompany this lesson. Okay, everybody, have a great day and see you later.